Welcome everybody to the Divine Mercy University Spiritual Direction Certificate webinar. There we go. I wanted to make sure you can see everything. My name is Greg Shapero. I am the Admissions Advisor here at Divine Mercy for the Spiritual Direction Certificate program. I've been here at DMU for almost 2 years now, but working within admissions within the university system for about 6 years now. With me today is Maria Brackett. Maria is the Program Director for SDC. And Maria, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Greg. So as Greg said, my name is Maria Brackett. I live here in Virginia, close to the university. And I have been a spiritual director now for about 15 to 20 years, and just and helped to create the certificate and just be a part of it. And about 2 years ago, well, now more than 2 years ago, actually, I came on as the director of the program.
All right, great. So I had mentioned earlier that we're going to be going through all the information, but as we're doing that, there's a chat section and a Q&A section. So we'll be sure to answer questions toward the end, but as questions come up, the last thing I want you to do is have that question in your mind and then forget it. So go ahead and put any questions that come to mind for you in the chat and Q&A, and we'll be sure to cover that. So without further ado, let's get started. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. The first thing is who we are as a university. Our mission, our identity, we'll be covering that. And then next is, what is spiritual direction? For a lot of people, they have the term spiritual direction, but they might have a different definition. So it's always a good idea to put it on the table and share how we're looking at what spiritual direction is. And then next, we'll be going into the SDC program, the ins and outs of it, what to expect in it, the curriculum, the online formatting, and then from there we'll go into the time frame, the time commitment, and the cost and tuition. So the first thing, our mission. So Divine Mercy University is an institution of higher education offering graduate degrees, continuing education, and certificate programs globally. We have students all over the world. The university is dedicated to the renewal of the Catholic Christian intellectual tradition and the integration of the theoretical and empirical basis of psychology, professional counseling, and related fields, with a Catholic Christian view of the human person through teaching and learning both knowledge and critical skills. So ultimately, it's the integration, the understanding of the human mind, but also more so looking at the person holistically, that we're all made in the image and likeness of God, and addressing the dignity of every single person. So the university provides students with an appropriate academic and educational environment that supports the integration of science, scholarship, and a Catholic Christian understanding of the person through a rigorous, critical, and objective search for truth. So this is something that's permeated in all of the programs that we offer, from the PsyD program to both master's programs, right into the Spiritual Direction Certificate program. This is our newest one. This one began back in 2019. So Maria, as the program director and also just as a spiritual director, is there anything that you could share about how this mission is, how it exists within this program, and why this makes this program unique from others?
So the mission of the university is really kind of why they went out and started a spiritual direction certificate, just believing that the soul, right, and the spiritual dimension of the human person is really this eternal dimension, right, and the importance that it has in helping a person to flourish. And so, you saw maybe on the title how we we talk about this program as helping people to flourish in their relationship with the Lord. And that means helping the person to bring all of themselves to that relationship with the Lord. And allowing that spiritual life or that relationship with the Lord to lead and to guide them. So we kind of see spiritual direction as just like a privileged place to be accompanying people. And we bring to the university brings to it this understanding of the human person, the dignity of the human person, the uniqueness of each individual, the capacity to flourish through relationships and vocational paths, right? And through commitment. And so that is just what informs how we go about spiritual direction. And also, it informs our curriculum in the program, because we do have a couple, besides, just the knowledge of the human person and how they develop, woven throughout the program are just some skills that are very common for the counseling world that we brought over to the spiritual direction world. Capacity to listen. We'll talk about different things later, but and also just the knowledge of the human person and how a person develops, and how the emotional life of a person or the relational life of a person could affect their relationship with a God and relationship with others, which ultimately also has to do with their spiritual growth.
Thank you, Maria. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And just to share with you our accreditation, we are institutionally accredited through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges. So this is one of the 7 major accrediting bodies. For instance, we share this accreditation with Duke University. And we're also approved to operate by SHEV, that's the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia. Now, the top accreditation that you're seeing, the American Psychological Association, this is a programmatic accreditation that we would only find within a doctoral program, but I still like to include it here because we do include the APA writing style in this program. This is something that students learn. It's part of the orientation. So every student is required to go through the orientation before they get started. It takes about 3 hours. The sooner that students get admitted, the sooner they get access to the orientation. I always encourage that just because it makes for a much easier transition into student life so that they can just focus on their program. But again, we always make sure that we're preparing students very well for the writing style and just to get acclimated to the university. So what is spiritual direction? Now, again, I've spoken with many students, and sometimes people look at this in a different, according to a different definition. But we're approaching spiritual direction from the Catholic tradition. Now, that doesn't mean that every student that goes into this program must be Catholic. That's not the case at all. We do have a lot of Catholics in this program. We also have a lot of non-Catholics that are in the program, but what they all have in common is their love for the mission of the school and their love for serving others and wanting to help direct people and understanding their faith and growing in faith and virtue. So what spiritual direction is? The first thing is that it's accompaniment. So it's assisting people on their path to the Lord. It's the act of being there for them in service both to them and the Lord. And it's deep listening to the directee, the person that you're working with. So it's that deep listening with them to help them deepen in their experience of the Lord and in his narrative in their lives. So our faith is a mystery. It's something that many times we are trying to wrap our heads around, and a spiritual director is a great guide for that. So the next thing is that it's a pilgrimage toward God. It's a clear goal of growing closer to him. But what it's not is therapy. And I think for some people, they might see it as therapy, and it's very understandable. Therapy could resemble spiritual direction, or maybe the other way, just because it's a lot of that listening and it's a lot of the one-on-one experience. But we wouldn't see it the same as therapy, but rather as walking with someone in their faith life, and that clear goal of growing closer to God. So there's a clear destination. And then the last thing is that it's formation and mission. So just as Jesus summoned and formed and sends forth, that's what spiritual direction is. Consider all of you that are here as guests that are exploring the idea of becoming spiritual directors. Or maybe you are spiritual directors and you're looking at this as a way to add to your training. At some point you were summoned by God to the faith. Even if many of you grew up in the faith, at some point you came to a decision that you wanted to continue on that path. And there's formation, there's that faith formation where you're growing in that. And then the last thing is that sending forth. You at this point, you're now hearing that calling to become spiritual directors. And you'll have that experience with many people that you work with as a spiritual director. They will have that same experience where they'll hear the calling themselves. So, in short, it's not so much teaching, it's not advice giving, though now and then these things will come up within spiritual direction, but it's really accompaniment, it's deep listening, it's walking with someone. And if I may share an analogy, we had a cohort here a couple of weeks ago for their residencies, and we'll talk about that shortly, but there was a student here, and I think he gave a great analogy, which was spiritual direction is two people in a dark room. The spiritual director is the one with the flashlight. He's the one shining in different areas. And the directee, the other person that he's with, is making acknowledging the observations that the spiritual director is making with his flashlight. And that's largely what this is. And so that they can apply what they're seeing and use it so that they can grow in faith. Maria, did you want to add anything before I continue on?
Well, I guess, Greg, just that this understanding of, it's not like we created this understanding of spiritual direction. It's really from the Catholic Christian tradition, embedded in just some of the great writings throughout the history of the Catholic Church and also some of the Christian churches. So it's not anything we created ourselves, really. It's just diving into the tradition and the richness, what the Catholic Christian tradition has to offer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We do have a question. I think it's a good question, so I'd like to read it off now. And Maria, if you can answer this one. So Mary Ann asked, are the faculty teaching in the spiritual direction certificate program all Catholic?
At this point in time, they are. We definitely could have some Christians also, just because of the way that this program is created. It's within that tradition. But at this point in time, everyone is Catholic. But that's just because that's just sometimes you find some people and sometimes you don't find others. So yeah, we definitely could have Christians in it too.
Yeah. So both, I mean, from my experience, just speaking with the faculty that I've met here, a lot of both Catholic Christians and non-Catholic Christians have been active in this program.
That's true, Greg.
As students, yeah.
And also in the development, when we developed it, we actually had a team that actually had some, we worked with an Anglican minister that's prominent here in the DC area for giving spiritual direction, and some of the faculty of the university themselves. Some of the clinicians are not Catholics, but they're, this mission that the university has is really, it's really umbrellas that, that whole understanding of the human person that we can find in these different faiths or in Christian faiths.
Yeah, good. I'm going to continue on to the next slide. So why is spiritual direction such an important ministry? many of you already have this idea of it because you've been called to this, but I always find this helpful to share. So the first thing is that offering the service of deep listening to another is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, our faith really is a mystery, but there's nothing more important than us growing in faith and becoming exactly what God has made us to be. So the next thing is accompanying our sisters and brothers in the faith to help strengthen their faith, hope, and love. So growing in the theological virtues, growing in molding our will to God's is also something that is found within spiritual direction and is so important for each of us. Guiding another to find the Lord in every situation. So whether it is very traumatic situations that unfortunately we go through, or the mundane, just the everyday lives that we have and the everyday tasks, or maybe even the moments of joy and leisure that we get to experience. So all these sort of gifts that we get, finding God in all of these scenarios is something that's incredibly important. And so spiritual direction is also very useful for us to find God more so in all of these types of moments in our lives. So also a way that others may discover their call to be a spiritual director. So I gave an example earlier that many of you have gone through spiritual direction, and then you had that aha moment of that you're hearing God calling you to become a spiritual director. The folks that you're directing will some of them may have that experience too. So it's just one of the great sort of gifts that keeps on giving, if you will. And then lastly, giving spiritual direction as a help also for the director to grow in his or her relationship with God. So, another example of a student I spoke with a couple residencies back. We had a student here and I asked her how the program was benefiting her. And I was expecting it to be more of her activity as a spiritual director because she had been involved in the ministry, but she was not formally trained. But she said that this program actually helped her as a directee. And it was something I wasn't expecting, but it made a lot of sense. Her relationship with her spiritual director in that capacity was more so enriched because she better understood what the director was saying to her or helping her with. And so there was a little bit more clarity in that sort of guidance that she was receiving. So it's something that I don't think we always expect, but it makes sense that we're getting a new perspective from the directee side, or rather from the director's side, but as a directee. Yeah, Maria, did you want to add anything?
What I was thinking of, Greg, is one of the things that I talk to people about is that spiritual direction it's a spiritual work of mercy, encouraging, counseling the doubtful, comforting the sorrowful. Sometimes, the people that are going through different things in their life. And so when you look at the spiritual works of mercy within the Catholic tradition, this is really a spiritual work of mercy, just wanting to offer yourself to listen and to accompany, and maybe from your own faith journey and your experience of the Lord to be able to help someone, right? In your own work that you do to grow in your relationship with the Lord, to be a better listener of the Lord in your own life and to have a heart turned towards him. And then hopefully just being able to be that for other people. So it is very beautiful. And I think it's a service that's very needed nowadays. Just the way that the situation of people are, and the disconnection that is happening between individuals, right? This is a way to really have a very meaningful connection that as a spiritual director sitting with the person can help that person to connect in a deeper way with the Lord.
Yes, very well put. I'm glad that you highlighted that this really is active within the spiritual works of mercy, and something I always forget to share with people, but it's very true. So next, what to expect in the spiritual direction certificate program. So the first thing is that the courses are done online. All 6 courses are done online and through an asynchronous format. Some of you are very familiar with that term asynchronous. For some of you, this might be a brand new term. But in short, this means that there's a lot of flexibility. So instead of having to log into classes through Zoom at X time of the day, you can log into your discussion boards at whatever time works within your day. So this means that you'll be posting in the discussion board, you'll be responding to your classmates, commenting on the topics that your instructors are presenting to you. It'll be up to you when you want to sit down and attack your material and sit down and write your written assignments. You'll still have your deadlines for your assignments, of course, and this is something that every student will need to go along with in cooperation with the program. But as far as when you want to sit down and do your work, that will be completely up to you. So again, we make sure that the program is accessible to those with a busy work life or a busy home life. And then, as I mentioned, there's 6 courses in total within this program. And there are a couple of face-to-face components as well. So one face-to-face component would be the 2 4-day residencies. And I'll go a little bit more into detail with that a few slides down, but there are 2 residencies in the program. And again, they're each for 4 days. And then there are 60 practicum hours for every student to complete. So the 60 practicum hours, this would happen a little bit later in the program. So this will actually officially be launched during your 5th course. And this is where you'll be active as a spiritual director with directees. You would be doing this in your local area, so you won't be required to travel for this part of it. You could do this within your parish. You could do this within your diocese. But this is where you'll be putting into practice the skills and knowledge that you're learning and active as a spiritual director. And you'll also be assigned a supervisor who you'll be communicating with as you're going through this, so that you can, with your supervisor, you'll be logging your hours, you'll be discussing the experience. And in this way, when you complete the program, you'll be even more prepared for continuing on within this ministry.
Yeah, Greg. And what I wanted to, sometimes people wonder, like, how long will I need? How much is the workload? So we built the course to be for about 6 to 9 hours a week between readings and assignments. So that's what you can expect as you're going through the course and the 6 courses, about 6 to 9 hours a week of work.
Yes, good. Well, I'm going to continue on. And these are the 6 courses that you'll be taking as a student, and they're sequential, so you'll be taking them in this order. So the first one is ongoing conversation, deepening discipleship, and foundations of spiritual direction. And then the second is human development for spiritual direction. The third one is relating skills for spiritual direction. And this is where your first residency will take place, and that will happen during week 7. The 4th course is discernment and spiritual growth, theory and practice. The 5th course is advanced spiritual direction, skills and practicum. And so this is where your second residency will fall during week 2. And this is also where your practicum will begin. Your second residency will launch your practicum hours. And then your last course will be advanced prayer and situations. So the residencies, which we had talked a little bit about, and here are a few pictures that we've had from recent residencies. So this is where all of the students, the cohort, will gather together with the instructors on campus. It'll happen here on campus in Sterling, Virginia. And this is where everyone will get a chance to put into practice the skills and knowledge that they're learning in mock sessions. There are lectures that are held. There are group sessions that are put together so that everybody can really hone in on everything that they're learning in the program. And I mentioned that it happens on campus, and students that fly in, they fly in through Dulles. Just to give you an idea, Dulles Airport's about a 5-minute drive. We always hear airplanes flying over us. It's very close by. And then students are also lodged at the one of the hotels next door. I can't remember which hotel it is, if it's a Hilton or Maria, maybe you know.
It's at Fairfield, Marriott.
Oh, okay, good.
Mhm.
So, but it's close enough. Many of the students will even walk from the hotel to the campus. So everything is in very close proximity. But the residency, now I say that it's a 4-day residency, and officially that's the case because it does go from all of Thursday until Sunday, but it officially gets launched on Wednesday evening, which is more of a meet and greet. So this is where all the students will gather together, really just to connect with each other. And it's more so social, though they do go into, if I understand correctly, Maria, sort of giving an explanation of what to expect over the next 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. Great. One thing I wanted to point out, and maybe the people can pick this up in the pictures, is just a real diverse student body. Men, women, priests, permanent deacons, consecrated women, men and women religious. We just had a missionary in from Peru for the residency that we just had recently, and deacons, the permanent deacons. And these are, I was just talking to one of them at the last residency, and he's been a deacon now for about 20 years. And he said that this program has just reminded him going back to his deacon formation days. And he's just loving it because he says, I feel like I'm growing again spiritually, like I experienced in those first years. I was a deacon, getting ready to be ordained a deacon. And so I did want to do a shout out to any deacons that might be on tonight. The deacons that have gone through the program and that are in the program, and we have a good group. I would say that we're probably up to at least 15 deacons that have either finished the program or going through it, permanent deacons, and they have just found it so beneficial. Usually these deacons are deacons that have been out there practicing their ministry and have kind of felt called to specialize in spiritual direction to serve their faith community, right? Or their parish priest has asked them to do this, their bishop, or they themselves have, put together that proposal so that they could come and do this program. But they definitely are finding it to be very good. And one was speaking to me the other day just about the listening skills, and he's like, this is helping me so much in all the other types of conversations that I have too as a deacon. So there's just a lot of different ways this can be applied to the life of a deacon.
Yeah, it's interesting because I speak with every student that comes into the program before they're admitted. And lately I've been seeing a lot more deacons that have been active in applying and their interest in this. And, one of them I'll even share, not too long ago, I spoke with, and he had mentioned how he is foreseeing this program being very helpful within his ministry, but even within his personal life. Deacons are kind of a special animal because they have so much activity within parish life or maybe other types of ministries, but then they also have the lives that they're at home. Many of them are in the marital vocation. And so the one that I spoke with, he had shared how this would be useful very much so within ministry, but even just the listening skills is something that he even sees as being helpful within his marriage and as a father to his kids. So it was just very interesting. So I'm going to continue on. And again, I'm just going to share again that if any questions are coming up as we're going through this information, feel free to drop those in the Q&A in the chat section. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the time commitment in the program. And so the first thing is that it is term-based. We go by the term system in this program, and each term is 8 weeks. And students are taking one course per 8-week term. They're taking one course at a time. Maria shared earlier that usually students are committing somewhere between 6 to 9 hours per week. Every student's different. It's not set in stone. It's not required that it's exactly this number. This is just more of a pattern that we've seen. So the one thing that I would encourage all of you who are interested in proceeding with an application and going forward in preparing to become a spiritual director, look at your own schedules, look at your own priorities and responsibilities, and see if carving out, just to be on the conservative side, 9 hours, if this is something that can be doable for you. Now, along with that, there are breaks between the courses that you're taking. You're taking one course at a time within an 8-week term, but then between these terms, you have breaks that, depending on where we are in the academic calendar, these could be between 8 to 10 weeks. So there's a lot of breathing room in the program. These breaks typically fall during very important holidays. So this is something that's very beneficial for you. Speaking with students and just remembering my time as a student, trying to juggle between the academic world and just being there with my family, or just wanting to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas, is something that I think many students, again, it's a juggle. In this case, this is something you would not have to juggle. You will have that time to commit fully to these moments. But then after these breaks are done, you'll just jump right back into the program.
Yeah, Greg. So just to be more specific about that, so there's a term that starts in August, a term that starts in January, and a term that starts in May. And so that really does free you up. They're just 8 weeks. So by the time we're getting to the end of October, or we're getting into March, and into the second half of July, beginning of August, that's really where you're going to be having those breaks. So yeah, like Greg was saying, you won't be in school around Thanksgiving or Christmas and Easter, the whole Easter time, kind of spring break time either. So it does, we built it that way because we really know kind of the people that take this program, those are the busier times for them, family and different, family or ministry, being in a parish or a church and all the things that need to be done around these celebrations.
Yeah, in fact, we're right now currently enrolling for the upcoming spring term, which will begin on January 11th. And so students that are active in that one, when they begin, they'll continue on in the program until March. And then at that point, they'll have that break until May. So we make sure that students have an idea of the academic calendar so they can know where their activity will take place and when their breaks will take place, so that if they also wanted to schedule vacations or schedule certain events for those downtimes, they can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then in total, for all of these things that we had highlighted between the breaks and the active terms, it would be a 2-year program. So from there, I'm going to continue on, and let's talk about the cost. Now, the first thing I just want to highlight very quickly, there could be room to reduce the cost per course by 10%. So one-on-one, we would want to have a conversation. If this is something that you're interested in learning more about, it would be a good idea for us to talk more about that. But in short, this might be for people that work in ministry or within some sort of church-affiliated group or organization. But with that, the cost per course is $778, and then the cost per residency is $1,000. Now that $1,000, that's going to cover the cost of your lodging. It'll cover your materials. It'll cover most of your meals. So students are only responsible for their travel, and they're responsible for 3 of their dinners, but everything else will be covered under that $1,000. Another thing I think worth mentioning, it's a pay-as-you-go program. So students aren't taking out loans. Now, I think that in some cases they might take out private loans, and if that's something that you're interested in doing, that can be done. But you wouldn't be participating in FAFSA, for instance. Rather, what students do is they pay course by course.
Yeah, exactly. And with the pay as they go method, as soon as they're registered for courses, that's when they get invoiced for it. So,
Yes, and they, in fact, I think when they get invoiced, they have, is it 30 days from the start of the class that they have to pay that?
30 days from when they're invoiced.
From when they're invoiced. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Very good. I'll even, just going back to the downtime, not to go too deep into it, but a lot of students find value in those breaks between terms because they use that time to replenish their funds as well. So instead of having to pay back to back the same way that you might in some courses, you'll have that downtime so you can replenish your funds as you're going through the program. So this brings us to the end. And again, one thing that I would love to do is for those of you that are really interested in going into this ministry, becoming a spiritual director, guiding people closer to God, and just having that accompaniment, active in that accompaniment ministry. I would love to speak with you one-on-one just to share a little bit more about this, understand your interest in this, and then from there to see if this is a good fit for you and how I can help you out with the application. Again, I'll share that the next start date that we have coming up will be for our spring term. That's going to start on January 11th. I know that seems far away. It's not. It's actually right around the corner. It sneaks up on us. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, I would encourage you to begin the application process today. It's a very brief process. You only do an application form, and then we just need 3 recommendations, and we'll talk more about that. And then an interview process as well. For those of you that are interested in doing an application, if you look at the bottom of the screen in the red box, usually the application is $25, but we can waive that for you. So there's a code, as you see it, SDC. It looks like that's a typo. Or no, I'm sorry, that's not the typo. SDC REGFREE. So if you put that code in, feel free to jot it down or screenshot it. If you put that code in, then we'll just waive the fee for you. And then, of course, my information is on screen if you wanted to get in touch with me. So what I'd like to do now is just open up the floor to everyone here who have questions. If there's anything that you'd like us to cover that we hadn't talked about yet, or just more clarity on the details that we've covered, then now is the time to ask us.
Greg, and I know some people have just questions about the content of the courses, just maybe a little deeper into just how we teach or how we teach the skills, things like that. Happy to answer those type of questions too. Now,
Yeah.
kind of know all the certificate inside and out, kind of. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people also have questions about the eligibility. What would make someone considered eligible to go into this program? So if you have questions about that, I will share very quickly just to answer it on a basic level. What we're looking for students that go into this program are those that have experience within spiritual direction. And by that, I mean in receiving spiritual direction. So we always want people that go into this to have had at least 1 year of experience in receiving spiritual direction within the past 3 years. So let's say that you have had spiritual direction within the past 3 years, but right now you don't have a spiritual director, then you would be considered eligible, but it would be important that you do find a spiritual director that you're active with throughout the duration of the program.
Yeah, we really want We really believe that you need to have had experience of spiritual direction to be able even to understand how it kind of functions and its benefits, and also to be guided, have had that experience of being discipled and being guided by someone, right? We do really feel like that's needed in your ministries of spiritual direction, that every spiritual director should also have a spiritual director and be in spiritual direction.
Yes, good. Now, Angelo has a question, and his question is, what is the background of the professors? So there are we have a lot of faculty members here, and one thing that I would encourage you all to do, in fact, maybe I can share the link. I'd be happy to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for just a moment. But we do have a link which I'm about to share, which
To the
is
website, right?
to the website. It's going to be more so the faculty of the programs. You can get an idea of all of our faculty members, their credentials, their activity.
Exactly.
So that way you
And
have
we're
a good
actually in
sense.
the process of updating that right now for the faculty of this year. But Angelo, just for your question, the faculty are either spiritual directors themselves, with some theology studies, right, that have been in the ministry of spiritual direction, or therapists or clinicians for some of the human development and the skills. So that's really the background of the two types of faculty members that we have, really depending upon the course that they're teaching and the role that they might be playing in the residencies. All of we take an approach really where we try to always be representing, having someone that represents the human development of the person, and then someone that is an expert and has knowledge and the spiritual development and what that looks like and in theology.
And Mary Ann asked, she said, I do not have she said one, meaning a spiritual director. Would it be best to have a spiritual director outside of DMU? So what we're looking for when we say that we want students to have a spiritual director, we just mean one that one that you've been working with in your local area. For most people, they have a spiritual director that they're connected with through their parish. We have a lot of folks that are active within Regnum Christi or other sorts of groups or apostolates. And that's typically what we mean. That is what we mean when we say that you have a spiritual director.
The program itself doesn't supply people with spiritual directors, although we do have an alumni directory on the website where graduates of our program, of all the programs, are listed, the ones that want to be listed so that people can find them, whether they're graduates from the School of Counseling or Psychology or the Spiritual Direction Certificate.
Yeah, and I'll even just reiterate too that if you currently don't have a spiritual director, that's all right, as long as you have had activity with a spiritual director for at least a year within the past 3 years. So again, if you've had a spiritual director sometime within the past 3 years for about a year, then you're halfway there. The only step next is to get in touch with a new spiritual director or your previous one and begin that activity again.
Yeah, so the way that we say on the website when we talk about this requirement is that you need to have a history of frequent spiritual direction. So we're not just looking like isolated consultations. We're really looking that you've had a spiritual direction relationship, an ongoing spiritual direction relationship with a spiritual director.
Yeah. So I'm going to wait for a few more questions. One question that I do typically get, which I'll share right now too, is just regarding the application process. I ran through it very quickly during the presentation, but in short, the application process is actually fairly simple. So the first step is to submit an application form from our website. It's on our website. And if hopefully you and I can speak one-on-one, I'd be happy to share the information with you again. So that's the first step. It takes about 10-15 minutes. The second step would be gathering recommendations. So we would need one from your present spiritual director, one from your pastor. It could also be a leader from your apostolate or your Regnum Christi group or your superior. And then the third one could be sort of I hate to use the term, a wild card. So this could be a friend or a colleague. We wouldn't want ones that are relatives, but relationships within friends or folks at your church or whoever, that would be fine. So then once we have all of those things, the final step would be a group interview. And it'll be you along with 2 or 3 other applicants. And you're not competing for a seat, but rather you're demonstrating to the facilitators. Maria is one of the facilitators for these group interviews. Your listening and communication skills and your knowledge of the faith and your ability to share and speak with others. So that's really what it is that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just because of the interpersonal nature of spiritual direction, and also you do need a certain amount of knowledge of theology, even though you don't need a degree. This is not a program that you need a degree to enter into. But, we are looking at, a good understanding of the Christian faith, Catholic faith, your faith tradition, and of the Catholic, if you come from a faith that's not Catholic or Christian, that you do understand the Catholic Christian faiths, so as to understand the context and the kind of the theological perspective that we use in the program.
Yeah. And also the application process from beginning to end is actually pretty short. We usually look for the whole process to be completed within 1 to 2 weeks. If for some reason you're running into some sort of life emergency that happens, we understand life does happen. As long as you're communicating to us, just so we have a sense of where you are in the process, that'll help us out. But we do typically look for the application process, the gathering of your recommendations, all of those things to be done 2 weeks from when you begin the application form.
And the application itself is not daunting. It's just your regular information, just a few questions for you to answer and develop. But yeah, it's not a college application. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think for some people, going back to school can be very, to use your word, daunting. It can be very intimidating. And that's understandable. But really, keep in mind, this is something that will prepare you for going into a ministry and working with people with authority and with a greater understanding, and I think a greater love for God and his mysteries and what we're called to do. So the application, very simple, and I'm here to help you out through that process. So if you have any questions, you're running into snags along the way, I'm here to help you out. I'm always happy to answer all questions.
Yeah, and then if anyone has questions about content or about faculty, Greg can always let me know, and we can find a time to talk too.
Yeah, good. Well, I think that ends us here. It doesn't look like we have any more questions, but again, if more questions come up, hopefully you have my contact information, which I put down, but we'll be sure to send it out to you as well. You're always welcome to call me, email me, text me. You're welcome to do that too. I'd be happy to connect with you one-on-one. So with that said, let's end it here. I just want to thank you all for being here for the webinar. And again, I look forward to speaking with each of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Greg.
All right. Take care.
Bye.